Hey everyone, Marvin here, and welcome back to Buddy Up Gaming. Terra Invicta is a deep, demanding 4X strategy game built around a fascinating question. How would humanity actually respond to the discovery of a hostile, technologically superior alien force? It's an incredibly complex game, but once you start to understand how its systems fit together, the way they interlock becomes absolutely gripping. In our Jupiter Rush series, we cover in full detail the optimal strategy for gaining an early edge against the true Goliath of this game, the aliens. In Part 6, we walked through how to begin mining Jupiter's moons and expanding toward Tier 2 space infrastructure. In this episode, we're going to focus on finishing out that Tier 2 expansion and then shift our attention back to Earth to make sure your home front can support everything you're building in space. From this point forward, the tactics we'll be using won't be fundamentally different from a more traditional Terra Invicta playthrough, but how they play out will feel different. In a typical game, you build up your space economy and fleet quietly under the aliens' noses, then strike once your ship designs give you a clear tactical edge. Terra Invicta features a hidden mission control cap, and exceeding it triggers total war with the aliens. Projects like Strategic Deception help raise that cap, letting you expand further in space without provoking retaliation. Normally, the long-term plan is to research far enough ahead that once total war begins, you can slowly grind the aliens down through attrition, bleeding their fleets dry before launching serious offensives against their holdings. That process can take decades to fully unfold. The Jupiter Rush strategy throws that pacing out the window. The moment you settle Jupiter, you're effectively committing to total war. The aliens will never stop sending ships to dislodge you from that system. Because of that, there's no real reason to limit your mission control usage. Instead, your goal is to fully leverage the enormous resource advantage Jupiter provides and use it to accelerate every aspect of your development as aggressively as possible. If you're constantly dealing with alien aggression, you'll never run out of ways to spend space resources. Building a Tier 2 mining network across space is extremely expensive, and upgrading those sites to Tier 3 costs even more. On top of that, once you move onto the offensive, fleet construction will become a major ongoing drain. While there will be brief lulls where you aren't spending much, it never hurts to stockpile extra resources, especially volatiles and base metals. The most straightforward approach is to simply keep building more mines around Jupiter and throughout the asteroid belt. And honestly, that's exactly what you should be doing early on. Eventually though, you may notice your mission control taking a significant hit from all this expansion. That's because Terra Invicta limits how many outposts you can manage before you start incurring mission control penalties for overextension. You can stay ahead of this for a while by dedicating more investment points to mission control in your nations, but long term, you'll want to prioritize technologies that raise your mining cap. That means researching mission to Mercury and potentially even mission to Saturn down the line. With that in mind, sending a colony ship to Mercury is often a smart move. Mercury hosts 8 mining sites that tend to have excellent base metals, along with solid volatiles and noble metals. It's essentially a budget version of Io, lower overall output, but also cheaper to settle thanks to lower shielding requirements and easier power generation. Defense will always be your top priority when spending space resources, but ideally you want to achieve that defense with as little investment as possible so you can redirect resources elsewhere. How difficult that is depends heavily on how quickly alien ships can reach your holdings around Jupiter or Earth, and that, in turn, depends on whether the aliens have established stations in the asteroid belt. Ships launched from Saturn or beyond can take many months to arrive, giving you plenty of time to react. Ships launched from the asteroid belt, however, can reach you in as little as 1 to 2 months. For that reason, destroying or at least delaying the development of alien asteroid stations can make your life much easier. I recommend two complementary strategies. Early on, when you have a brief lull in defensive shipbuilding, invest a small amount of resources into a disposable gunship capable of reaching an alien station in the asteroid belt. This ship doesn't need armor or fancy utilities, just slap whatever weapon you have available onto the nose and send it out. Your goal is to target stations that are in the middle of upgrading and temporarily undefended. As of this video's release, the aliens tend to be sloppy when defending stations far from their home territory in the Kuiper Belt. They'll often rush upgrades from Tier 1 to Tier 3, leaving defensive modules permanently under construction and therefore inactive. With the limited number of ships they can field early on, it's sometimes possible to catch these stations completely unguarded. Even a gunship armed with a humble 8-inch cannon can destroy them. The second strategy is your long-term solution, and builds naturally out of your defensive fleet. Once you unlock a higher Delta V drive with solid thrust, such as the Helican, you can begin building Monitor-class ships capable of reaching asteroid targets within 6 to 12 months. Count the number of battle stations protecting the target, then assemble a fleet with at least that many missile boats. Battle stations put out a terrifying volume of magnetics, so you'll need substantial point defense. In these engagements, monitors make better PD platforms than escorts. Most of what we've discussed so far can be handled with your current tech level, but eventually you'll need to ramp up your research output to tackle larger projects, like Advanced Missile Warfare Doctrine. There's no easy way to massively increase raw research output on Earth beyond completing projects like National Research Oversight and National Labs. So instead, we'll focus on boosting your research modifiers. Early in the series, I mentioned scouting for counselors with traits like astronomer or social scientist, which increase space science and social science research respectively. Later, we covered acquiring science-focused orgs, especially for your tech mogul, so they can provide stronger bonuses when running the advised mission. Many of those orgs also grant flat research bonuses. Now that your space infrastructure is expanding, it's time to stack those bonuses even higher by building research centers in low Earth orbit. You may already have several Tier 1 science labs supporting your initial tech rush toward mission to Jupiter and industrialization of space. Those are useful early on, but the 2.5% bonus they provide is negligible in the long run. Upgrading them to Tier 2 research centers increases that bonus to 10% per module, making it much easier to hit the 50% soft cap where diminishing returns begin to apply. When built in low Earth orbit, these research centers also come with some excellent secondary bonuses. Space science centers improve the mission control priority, and information centers boost the knowledge priority, making the USA more efficient at generating mission control and increasing the research output of your second research nation. Military science centers raise the military technology level of your armies, which will come in handy later when we talk about conquering the EU. Unlocking Tier 2 research centers requires the Directed Space Research Global Technology, which is gated behind two expensive prerequisites: quantum computing and advanced atomic manipulation. You'll want advanced atomic manipulation anyways for nanofactories, while quantum computing unlocks upgraded targeting computers to counter alien ECM, as well as the Research Campus module. Both are extremely useful as we push deeper into the mid-game. Finally, let's turn our attention back to Earth. As you saturate low Earth orbit with stations, the increase in control point cap from all those admin nodes should give you enough breathing room to expand beyond your second research nation. At this stage, my recommendation is to target the EU to further increase your mission control cap and your boost income. That boost is especially important on a 2022 start, since maintaining all those admin nodes carries a significant upkeep cost, and what you're generating from the USA and China alone often isn't enough to cover it. Timing matters though. The state of the EU varies wildly depending on what rival factions have been doing. In some runs, the EU never fully forms. In others, a rival faction manages to integrate multiple nations. Ideally, you want the former. While unification reduces the number of control points required to hold territory, it also reduces the total number of investment points, which slows mission control development. For our purposes, it's better for EU nations to remain independent and focus their investments on building mission control. Before committing fully to the EU, consider grabbing a few nations purely for spoils. Space expansion is incredibly expensive, and at this stage, you should avoid running spoils in your research nations if possible. Target countries with strong spoils output, a high investment point to CP ratio, and low unrest. You'll need to manage cohesion carefully, but this income can carry you until nanofactories come online. If you get desperate, selling noble metals or temporarily adding spoils to a research nation can keep you afloat. Once you're financially stable, aim to capture the legislative and executive control point of the EU or France. You don't need every control point right away. Holding the executive incentivizes rival factions to leave the Federation, allowing you to rival and absorb those nations through war. Taking the EU is very different from taking the USA or your second research nation. Instead of public campaigns and control nation missions, you'll rely heavily on crackdown and purge. Even a maxed out investigation counselor may struggle against defended control points, so build public opinion to at least 50%. If that still isn't enough, consider penetrating the rival faction and assassinating or retiring their counselors. Since counselors contribute to CP cap, removing them may push their cap below their current usage, conferring a penalty to defended control points. However, timing is critical, as factions will quickly disable other control points to compensate. Once you're ready to fully take control of the EU, start by targeting nations that have already saturated their mission control investment. We'll be using the 6 armies from the USA, so you'll need to go into the Relations tab and end any alliances with your target nations. You should also avoid declaring war if the target is allied with other nations that have armies, since the war won't automatically end after you absorb the target. In that situation, you'll either need to take a cohesion hit to force peace or risk committing atrocities. You'll also need to be especially careful with allies that possess nuclear weapons, because they will use them and completely wipe out your armies. The workaround here is to remove the allied status ahead of time through the Relations tab, either by purging the executive control point of your target nation or of those allies. For EU expansion in particular, this usually means dealing with the UK and Turkey as potential threats. At this point, you should have a clear roadmap for continuing to build out your infrastructure in both space and on Earth, as you work toward fully utilizing Tier 2 modules. Once you've unlocked technologies that increase your mining cap and populated each outpost with an operations center, you'll have a healthy mission control pool for supporting larger fleets and beginning the transition to Tier 3. Fully controlling the EU will also net you at least 90 additional mission control, along with a substantial boost income. Nanofactories across your outpost network will do much of the work of funding your continued expansion in space, and any remaining financial shortfall can be covered by the spoils nations you've held onto following your EU expansion. In the next episode, we'll cover the transition into Tier 3 space infrastructure and which upgrades to prioritize. By then, the aliens are as good as toast. They just don't know it yet. If you found this guide helpful, be sure to like the video, subscribe to Buddy Up Gaming, and stick around for the next installment. Take care out there.